Is your team just using AI to write blog posts a little bit faster, or are they building a strategic workflow that actually drives results? So, this is a question that separates the hype from the reality of AI in business today. And many of us have dabbled with AI for content, but the results are often very generic, they're very uninspired, and it's a lot of what we like to call AI slop. So, how do we move beyond the basic prompt and build a content engine that's not just faster, but it's smarter? How do we stack different AI tools to handle everything from complex data analysis to creating genuine, compelling stories? Well, to guide us through that, our guest today is Nick Matar, who is an entrepreneur, a professor, and the author of 3 books on marketing and AI, including his newest book, Generative AI for Marketers. Now, he teaches digital marketing at Wayne State University, which is in my hometown of Detroit, and he is the founder of Marketing 1080, where he specializes in content marketing for B2B companies with complex missions. He is on the front lines, not just talking about AI in theory, but building real-world AI workflows for himself and for his clients. Nick, welcome to the Digital Impact.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here talking about AI and content marketing, really at the intersection of everything that I do.
What is the biggest misconception that you see business leaders have when it comes to using AI, specifically for content marketing?
Well, I think business leaders really either take it too far or they don't take it far enough. On one side, the side that you don't see as much, but you hear about more in the media, is that more businesses are letting AI completely automate all of their content generation, which, if you read a little bit more into it, it's not really the case. Yes, there are some general overviews, basic news headlines like those written by the AP that are generated almost entirely by AI. However, that is very much the exception and not the rule. I think what we're seeing more of is when you hear one person, one marketing leader, one CEO, one anybody of any consequence mention, oh yeah, we're going to start moving towards automation with AI. That kind of gets blown out of proportion, and to people, these sensational headlines that make it seem like, oh, this company is just automating everything. They're going to fire everybody. AI is taking over the world. When in reality, most of these people are just in the first stages of exploring what that could look like in a future iteration. And for the most part, I've seen most businesses using AI pretty responsibly. I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but more using it for content ideas, outlines, helping with brainstorms, things like that. But then there's the other side, which I think is a little bit more common amongst those of us in the small business world. And that is people that are completely against it and refuse to utilize it for anything. These are the people that, they might have an ethical dilemma. They might not like, I completely understand and agree that there are plenty of ethical and moral dilemmas with certain aspects of AI. But also, a lot of companies that just don't, they just kind of refuse to acknowledge this emerging technology, and they completely shut it out entirely, or they are very limited in the scope. And as a result, you have these companies whose teams are now finding ways around these guardrails that are really limiting, and it becomes an issue of much larger consequence than what business leaders expected. You see this a lot with Microsoft, not the business, but really companies that utilize the Microsoft suite of programs, and they might be okay with Copilot, right? They're like, okay, we understand this. We've been using Microsoft programs for years. We use Teams, we use Outlook, all these things. So we can allow Copilot into our systems, but nothing else. And as a result, you have people then going around them to use programs like ChatGPT. And the downside of that is that's where the problems really do happen, because then, there's not as much training, there's not responsibility. And that is when things like company secrets proprietary data and information ends up leaking into these other platforms. So there's your long-winded answer.
And that's primarily just because of lack of training. Right. So
Absolutely.
if I'm gonna reach out and use whatever programs I want to use because I know that this program might help me do this job a little bit faster. So this is every IT leader's worst nightmare, right? When we start introducing shadow tech into the tech stack, into the company, and people are just using whatever programs that they want to use, and there is no control anymore. And now all of a sudden your data, your information is being spread out by employees who are just frustrated because they feel like they've been trapped, uh, stuck with using software that they feel is either inefficient or just not as effective as it could be. And I've heard a couple ways where you can work around that, like within the business model, but that really does come down to the business leaders themselves and them, you know, providing some kind of a sandbox that allows people uh, to experiment.
Yeah, and also in this, I actually do talk about this in my generative AI book a little bit. Is when you have business leaders making these larger AI decisions, a lot of times they are just kind of made in a vacuum and just within the leadership team. They're not. They don't really consider the input of the rest of the company. And if you think about like, okay, who uses AI on a regular basis? Who uses it the most? A lot of it comes down to marketers, people in marketing, people in communications. We use AI a lot because we are the ones tasked with a lot of that creativity, that idea generation, where I can recall plenty of times, as I'm sure you can too, where it's just like, wow, I have to come up with this new idea. It's 8:30 a.m. on a Monday. I need a jump start. And that is often, I haven't surveyed too many organizations, but that is often where ChatGPT and these other platforms are most helpful. It helps them just kind of wake up and get a head start, so that when that first Monday morning coffee hasn't kicked in yet, they have some support.
I agree. Um, on the other side of that, though, we've got what we're both calling AI slop. Actually, it's what everybody's calling it, right? It's usually that's pointed towards video content, but honestly, I think it's anything that is entirely AI generated, and you look at it and you just know right away this is AI garbage. All right. So, in your view, why are so many companies that try to use AI content, why do they end up with this slop? What is the root cause of this?
Well, so I look at AI slop as, again, taking one of two forms. One is exactly what you just said. It is repetitive 101 level material that doesn't get reviewed. That's really what it comes down to is, again, this is more of the exception, not the norm, but there are organizations out there that will churn out content that is automated, that has no human intervention. If there's no, at least a human editorial review, you end up with things they might be factually correct, but it's a very repetitive format. You have your topic sentence, a couple of sentences of supporting information, and then a restating of the topic sentence. And that becomes not only repetitive, but it just doesn't go in depth, nor does it really have the human element to it, the soul that something that is written by a person would have. And again, I think that just comes from putting everything on autopilot, letting it go live without that human intervention, and connecting back to what we talked about earlier with these guidelines, these policies. That's where a leadership team needs to step in and set some guardrails and set some rules, for lack of a better term, to ensure that the content that's being put out there is accurate. It's not just accurate, is putting their best foot forward. Now, the other side of AI slop that I would like to make sure to share today is the idea of AI hallucinations. I don't think you and I have talked about this before, but I would like to share a little story of what happened to me recently with ChatGPT. So I've used ChatGPT a lot over the last couple of years. It's gotten to know me pretty well. As a result, like the content it creates is pretty well tailored to me. and I will say, if there's one thing that AI, especially the GPT model, is really good at, it is understanding the user after you've used it enough times. It picks up your writing style. It'll pick up, you train it well enough, it can create some pretty good content. And I will say, like, the stuff that I asked it to do 2.5 years ago compared to what I ask it to do now, night and day, the results. However, there is this idea of AI hallucination, and that is the idea that, generative AI's number one goal is to answer your question. And even if you don't ask it a question, right, you're looking for input or anything, like, it's going to give you an answer. That is, unfortunately, the priority for AI over accuracy. And so ChatGPT would rather give me an answer rather than I don't know. The classic IDK is not in ChatGPT's vernacular. Neither that, shorthand AIM version, nor the long form version of just saying, I don't know, I don't have an answer for you. And so I was looking for some case study examples for a class that I was teaching. And I said, hey, I need an online advertising example, specifically B2B. It had already given me some good B2C ones. I need a B2B example. And it told me that, hey, here's one, Slack, the company Slack, when they started about 12 years ago. And I thought, okay, this is interesting because I know a little bit about Slack. That is a company that was infamous for setting unreal expectations for hypergrowth without advertising. They grew a giant user base, 100 million or whatever, without ads, because it was really about the product, right? Strong product, and word of mouth spread really fast. They were really filling a need that we had in the workplace many years ago. That it's funny because today there's 1,000 options, but that was really the first one. And so I looked into this, and let me just read a quick sentence for you. This is what ChatGPT gave me. It said, instead of cold outbound sales, Slack invested heavily in targeted online advertising from the start, paired with a freemium model and simple messaging. And I thought, maybe I'm misremembering Slack's growth here. So I looked at the results, and it's like, wow, these are really impressive results. By 2016, Slack reported spending $1.8 million on paid advertising in a quarter and attributed $4.5 million in revenue from those campaigns. And I thought, okay, if this is true,
these results are still coming from GPT, right?
First,
like when you asked it to do the research,
right?
Okay.
And I thought, if this is true, this is an incredible case study. It is exactly what I'm looking for. It's great. I looked down and it had citations. So, all right, there's 2 citations here. Great. One is an interview. One is an Adweek article. So I clicked the references, because what you always got to do is look at the references. The first one, which was an interview with the CMO, did not exist. And I thought, okay, like, this is old enough. Maybe it's just been taken down. The second one just took me to the Adweek homepage. And I thought, all right, maybe these 2 are both too old. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, can you put the references in text? I need you to match them up. And then also, I need you to give me more information about where these came from so that I can, cite these properly. It then was like, all right, here's some more information. And it gives me a breakdown. It essentially summarizes these 2 sources that I can't find. All right, fine. I click the links again. They still don't work. And I responded, and it gave me full URLs, URLs that look real. And I thought, okay, this looks good, but I can't find the pages. Can you help me find this? Can you help me? I need to go into the Wayback Machine. It gave me then instructions, and it's like, all right, go to the Wayback, because it can't do the Wayback Machine for you at this. I'm just using 4.0. I should have been using Deep Research, but I wasn't. And it's like, all right, here's instructions how to use the Wayback Machine, which I knew how to use. Went back, could not find either one. And I thought, okay, I'm starting to question this. And then I said, hey, how did you get these pages to load? And then it proceeds to give me a couple other ones. And then it's like, hey, Nick, here's what you can do next for your case study, for your class. You can either use a public summary, or if you want to do a deep dive, you can maybe use institutional login from university, that might give you access to it. It's like, all right, I keep getting 404 errors. Like this is what I'm telling ChatGPT. I need my students to have access to these facts. Like I need to provide links that work. And then it goes, here's how I track down the key points. This is what ChatGPT is telling me. It then goes on to tell me how this growth marketing expert wrote an article with all the numbers that ChatGPT first gave me. So I looked up this person. This is a real person, but they didn't share those numbers. I found how this person talked about how Slack grew organically, but not through advertising. So again, ChatGPT continues to dig itself in this hole of lies. It is spinning this web of lies for me. That finally gives me a Wayback Machine link to both sources. Once again, they don't work. What they call live links. Finally, I come back and I said, all right, I'm not sure this is real. And then I go, all right, chat, I just tried to find these. This is what I said. And not even the Wayback Machine can find this. And now I'm reading an article about Slack that says they never even used advertising in its first 5 years. So this is what I said. So I'm asking you again, what are your verifiable live web pages that use the data points that you have in your case study? And then it responds, you're absolutely right, Nick. You're right to want live verifiable sources. Thanks for holding us to a high standard. Here's what I found. And then it comes back with links that, Slack uses advertising like today. And no, it didn't use ads before. And it's giving me real sources. Like I go back, I see these are real pages. And they're, okay, yes, it spends millions today. I figured. And then it comes back with a summary. Here's what we can confirmed. And it gives me like the real articles. And then it says, here's how I reconciled this article. And then I finally was like, okay, so you're telling me that you lied to me and that you just made this stuff up. And it's like, and then it responded in like, yes, sometimes we hallucinate here because we struggle with the amount of data that we're processing. It kind of like just made up some lies, made up some excuses. And I mean, I spent a solid hour in this conversation with chat and like trying to go back to verify these sources. And it was, I mean, about halfway through, my conversation here with chat, I was at a point where it's like, at this point, I just want ChatGPT to admit that it lied and admit that this is over, because I know this case study is not true. I know that it made up a case study from the start. And for me, that's how AI hallucinations can really get you in trouble. If I hadn't verified that and I just went with it, like I would be putting out factually incorrect information.
The crazy thing is if you hadn't straight up told it, all right, stop it, you're clearly lying to me. And then it said, gosh, you're right, I'm sorry, here's some better information. But if you hadn't done that, like every time you asked it, help me verify this, can you help me with this? And it was just, sure, no problem. Like this is the kind of stuff that if this had come from a live employee, you'd have fired him by now.
That not only would this person be fired, but that could have had really major implications on a business.
We've seen that. We've seen it happen legally. Somebody had a legal case and they were looking up cases that they could use as examples, and it gave them exactly what you wanted. You asked me to provide you with real cases that are about this subject. Here you go. And then he took it with him up to the judge and said, here, you can see right here, plain as day. And none of this existed. None of this was real. It just made it all up.
I remember that. I've looked those up as well. And it's, to me, it's just incredible that, like, I don't know. I've always looked at all this stuff with, a ton of, a lot of skeptical, like very apprehensive thinking, like there's no way that ChatGPT just magically provided an answer that I was looking for that is exactly how I wanted it. And for me, a lot of it comes down to prompt engineering. Part of it too, though, is the version that you use. So I was using 4.0, which is the latest version. But the thing that I wasn't doing is I wasn't using deep research. Like, for example, like when I use Perplexity, that is hailed as like the number one that you use for academic stuff. And I use deep research. Like, it has never given me lies like this. It's actually been much better. And I've since, have not used ChatGPT for this. But ChatGPT does have a deep research option. And you can only use it so many times. I'm on a paid version. I think I get 25 a month. But when I went back and tried using deep research on it for another request, it actually came back fully correct. Like, it was factually correct. So part of it could just be as simple as using the right tools that you need. But this still stands that, like, if you're asking it, a lot of people use ChatGPT and AI now just as a replacement for Google. And my concern now is that people are going to start getting fake results and fake answers, because with Google AI mode, by default, it churns out, AI mode is essentially on Google summarizing the results, which is usually correct because at least it's summarizing real pages. ChatGPT is not doing that usually. Even on 4.0, it's providing you results that are often not correct, because it would rather give you something that answers your question than saying, I don't know.
So let's talk about a tech stack then, because I think you're onto something when we talk about there is no one magic tool.
Right.
And I really do think narrowing yourself down to just the one tool, especially for a business, and you're like, all right, everybody in our business, we're just going to use Copilot and nothing else, or we're just going to use GPT. You don't need anything else. GPT can do everything. You don't need all the other stuff. That's probably going to land you in hot water at some point, because you really need to look at this more like a piece of a larger tech stack.
Absolutely. And I will say, Google, the new Google stuff that's like what, $200 a month, is getting closer to replacing the stack, but I would argue it's not quite there yet. And for me, yeah, I use, ChatGPT still works as kind of a catch-all. It kind of fills in the blanks, but when it comes to something like video, when it comes to any sort of music, those types of things, for me, I like to use more niche platforms for my more niche needs. I'll give you my stack for now. The example that I always like to share, by the way, a lot of times I learn all this like at midnight when I'm just kind of up experimenting with different platforms. So one night I set out to figure out, like, I read a bunch of different stuff and I thought, okay, could I create a music video from scratch? And I'm going to give myself an hour to do it. I didn't have a song. I didn't have lyrics. I didn't have any idea. I started with a clear mind, started my timer. I went to ChatGPT and I created lyrics pretty quick. And I decided to do it about online reviews was what I was going to be. It was like top of mind. I was writing something about online reviews. Came up with some pretty good lyrics. Fine. If you want ChatGPT to do something for you, ask it to write a poem. It'll do it. Gave me some good. Obviously, I reviewed it. I made some changes to make it fit the classic iambic pentameter style. Changed a couple of word choices to fit more about, like people at restaurants type of thing. Then I used a tool called Suno, which is absolutely my favorite AI music tool. Dropped the lyrics in there, and I said, create me a 90s alternative music style song that uses these lyrics. It created a version of a song that I legitimately really liked. For me, the song was good enough that I would have never thought it was AI generated. And I was so lost in the music being like that good that I thought, like, wow, I would put this on my Spotify playlist. Took that, exported it. Then I used a video tool called InVideo. And all that does is it takes stock images and it animates them for about 3 to 5 seconds. Not a lot. So if it's a photo of like friends sitting, the big one for me was it's friends sitting at a table at a restaurant, and you can tell that they're like having fun, enjoying it. And the video, how it turns into a video is everybody moves just a little bit. like a couple of frames. If you've ever done stop animation or like, create any cartoons yourself, like every page needs to be like really small changes. I used to do that when I was a kid. I create a little flip book. And that's kind of what this is people move just enough where it's a 3 to 5 second video. And it strings together, based on the prompt you put in, it'll find a bunch of them. And for me, it created about 2.5 minutes worth. And I had to move some of them around a little bit. I used an AI editing tool called Veed, which is really powerful. I could quickly put in the transcripts, things like that. Then what I would do is I will say, if I had been able to spend another hour on this, I could have perfected it. Because within video, some of the clips will replicate, it will play again later. And it does get a little repetitive towards the end. I cut out a couple of the really repetitive parts. And by that point, I was at like 45 minutes. So I exported the video that it had the song with it and everything. Then I went to Canva, created a YouTube. I had it create me a YouTube thumbnail with an AI generated person. Pretty easy. Exported that, uploaded it to YouTube, had the thumbnail. I just wrote the description myself in like 30 seconds, listed my stack, and boom, done. Was finished in under an hour, and that was it. And for me, I would say my video would probably still fall under AI slop. The music was definitely not slop. It was good quality stuff. But for me, it was just a matter of time and more about like, can I do this? This is the power of AI. And it was pretty impressive. That was almost a year ago though. And today, I think when looking back at it, AI video creation has probably advanced the most over the past 8 to 10. It was probably 10 months ago I did this. AI video has improved the best since then. Otherwise, it's all kind of similar. But I still look at that as a great example of how you can, use an AI stack to create something that one individual tool platform probably can't do yet. And if it can, it probably can't do it at that kind of quality.
I'll take it back to even simpler content like putting together a blog or a white paper. So I know with mine, I use Perplexity to do
Yep.
all of my research. And then I take the research report and I take it over into Claude, because Claude I use to do the actual structure of it, because it does a great job when it comes to the structure of a white paper or the structure of a blog. And then I take the structure and the report, I put both of those into now GPT or Gemini or whichever that I want to use for actual writing, along with brand guidelines and everything. And I have that generate the actual content. And then I will take it back into Perplexity to fact check it, just to make sure that none of these other systems threw in some new random numbers that I can't verify.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is a stack. There is no one system that would do it. Perplexity does great for all of these reports, but it can't write for anything.
No.
And then you go the other way around, where GPT, more at the time, maybe the deep research is a little bit better now, but I mean, even with the deep research, it does not do research to the level that Perplexity will do.
Yeah, and Perplexity is good too at finding academic studies, which for me is I use those a lot in my work. But yeah, you're right. Like what ChatGPT does is it just Googles and finds the results that match your query the best. And it doesn't usually provide the level of sophistication that someone like you or I would need.
We've got enough time that I want to hit one other topic that you and I talked about a while back, and I just feel like it's appropriate here because we're talking about content and content creation. But the other big part of what we do in marketing is reporting. And
Absolutely.
I have a passionate frustration for Google's GA4. I think you do too.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
so I feel like this is the perfect use case for AI, right? Like this is the perfect fit for taking these systems that we know that we need, but can be very, very frustrating to put together, and then using AI to pull meaningful insights from them?
Yeah, well, I will say to start, I've started using AI to essentially help me understand GA4. Um, the one what they claim, what Google claims, is that the big advantage to GA4 is that it provides more customization. And got to tell you, I don't see it. Not really, not great. However, the connection to Looker Studio is a little bit better, where you can create more data visualizations. But that still very much kind of leaves you on your own. And I would say for me, I prefer to just have all the data in front of me and create my own, come up with my own answers, right? Find my own things that I see, any trends, correlations. Having said that, I think we are at a point where AI can do much more and at least provide you that starting point in assessing data. There are, to start, you can connect your GA4 to Gemini. I think you can connect it to ChatGPT. I know you can connect your Gmail, for example. I think you can, I haven't connected Google Analytics to it yet, but
I believe that you can. I believe that's one of the options now.
yeah, as one of the connectors. And if you're wondering what that means, it's just in your ChatGPT settings, and there's an option for connectors. You can connect all sorts of accounts to it. For me too, like I've only ever used my own website on this stuff. I've never used a client website, but because I don't know where that information is going to be publicly made available, or not available, but used for training data. But what I've been able to find in my use with Google is the big finding is that you can just ask any question about your website, and it will try to provide you some insight into it. So the big thing for at the most basic level is, for example, in GA4, there is not a default way to see like the day of the week that had the most traffic to your website. Just a very base, surface level vanity metric. A lot of times you see those, especially with businesses, website traffic ebbs and flows, and you see Saturday. It's clear what days are Saturday and Sunday if you're looking at like a month. But and you might be able to decipher what days of the week are biggest. But if you wanted to find that out in 5 seconds, you could just ask and say, hey, what day of the week am I getting the most average traffic? If you put that into GA4, it's not going to give you an answer that you like. It's not going to give you the right answer. It'll answer a different question than what you're asking, which to me is a big problem with GA4 and claiming to have all this customization. But if you use an AI platform, you can say, hey, over the last 12 months on my website, marketing1080.io, what day of the week on average do I get the most traffic? It can get that for you instantly. And to me, that is where AI can really shine, because it is just number visualization, and it is removing the monotonous manual review of stuff like this. The other thing that I will say is in creating reports, doing research, it's really helpful. So, for example, I used to do every summer a report on the state of entry-level, not even entry-level, of remote marketing jobs. And at one point, it was just entry-level remote marketing jobs, like very specific. And what I would do is I'd go into LinkedIn, I would pull like 100 job postings that were open from around the country, and I would manually go through and pull out, okay, what are the responsibilities? What are the qualifications? What is the salary range, if there is any, like all that type of stuff. And then I would create a report. Like I would come up with data visualizations from there. It would take days of just manually going through and analyzing every single job post. Now you can automate that and pretty much have AI just do it for you, and point out certain correlations, certain trends about any part of that typical job post, and I can find with pretty good certainty that, these averages are going to be good. Now, obviously, you want to go back and make sure that they are correct. But, instead of going through and pulling out every single key word from 100 job posts 100 times for all these different topics, I can take what would take about 10 hours and it'll take about 15 to 20 minutes. And for me, that is really the big part in analysis and research in general that AI is helping with, is that the monotony of cleaning the data, reviewing, and essentially coding all of the information to something that might work for something like SPSS or something. That used to be the thing that would take researchers the longest time. And now that is almost automated to the point where you can then just start asking the questions. I don't think we're there yet for the really in-depth academic research yet, p-values and figuring out the right type of test and all that stuff. But we can at least get our baseline data in a more usable format in a fraction of the time that it took before when it would just be a manual process.
Now, we talk about the future of AI, and people will jump up and down and say it's all going to be all about AI agents. Other people say, no, we're getting closer to general AI, and that's going to be the thing. But when we spoke, we actually talked about what makes a lot more sense, especially for the near future, which is APIs.
Right.
And how that really, if it's not already, should be considered the next frontier in AI. Like, this is where AI can become truly useful, is when it can tap into existing systems. Sprout Social, GA4, MailChimp, even Foxit software has this ability, right? And so we're seeing that grow and grow. So fill me in a little bit more as to what does this future look like? Where are we headed? What are the hurdles, and where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on one hand, all of these enterprise level companies have their own AI tools that they peddle to users. On MailChimp, for example, they have an AI email builder that will create an email for you based on a prompt. I believe they've also created it to the point where if it'll look at your previous emails, what's worked the best, and integrate the best elements, right? Pretty much what you would expect, where that's what MailChimp should be doing. Canva, same way. They've created essentially an image generator similar to ChatGPT's, where you just put in a prompt and it creates something. I don't love Canva's AI platform yet. I think it's pretty rudimentary. I would still rather use actually ChatGPT for image generation than Canva, but
Same.
It's a start. Yeah, right. It just kind of creates another version of an image that you could just find by searching. Where the APIs come in for me is where it can synthesize your information, which I realize people will be very hesitant to do because you think it's just going to take all your data and like steal it and use it for other things. But depending on what that data is, I mean, I honestly ask the question, like, do you care? For me, I think the example I shared with you before was I would love if I could integrate AI more into my weekly fantasy football work, right? Like, I don't really care who knows what my team is. I don't really care, what where that goes. And yes, I understand there's other personal information and all of that. I'm just kind of talking in generalizations here. But it would be great if every week Yahoo just sent me a notification saying, hey, we've updated your lineup for you. And if you want to take a look before the games start here, and it's like a push notification and I see it. To me, that is like an easy, time-saving, surface level, personal advancement for AI that would be massively successful to millions of people, and to the point for me where I'm saving 30 to 60 minutes per week very quickly there. Just kind of putting that on autopilot. Say what you will about that takes all the fun out of it. Like that might be, but there are certain weeks where I don't really have the time or I forget. The same could be said about something with your email. And again, I understand it. I immediately think about, do I want to give AI access to all these things? And that's really what the API comes down to, is you first got to get over that hurdle of what is it going to do with my information? As long as I know it's not going to steal it, use it, sell it, whatever. If those policies are put into place, the terms and conditions outline that specifically, great, let's go with it. But again, I know that is a fairly big hurdle. I just wanted to make sure to mention that. But there's other things that this can be used for. And for me, the big one is email. I don't trust Copilot enough yet, because Copilot claims to be doing this for you as like serving as your virtual assistant, but it really doesn't. Being able to connect a platform to your email and having it actually serve as your virtual assistant, reminding you about things where, like, for example, I have something that I've got to work on later today that's due tomorrow on August 1st. And I mean, I just know it because I looked at it in my email this morning. Normally, you'd have to go into Outlook at least and create flag it or create a reminder. You have to do manual processes in order to instigate these things. Whereas an API where you create an AI virtual assistant sets it up where you don't need to do that. It can read through and parse it for you and send the reminders for you, along with what might be like pertinent information that relates to it, so that I can do my job a little bit easier without spending all the time searching. So, those are two examples where I think APIs could really help, where, yeah, you can connect an AI platform that knows you. For me, unfortunately, it's ChatGPT, an AI platform that is familiar with you, that you've worked with over the past X number of years. And if you make it more a part of your everyday systems, I think that is where people are going to see more and more time saving and more resource saving too. I mean, I'm starting to see people using AI to help with their budgeting and their finances. I wouldn't go that far yet, but I see AI helping people with like what stocks they should buy. There's all sorts of other opportunities that I think people just haven't started thinking about yet, because that's just kind of like you got to think outside of the box in terms of what can you automate in your everyday life that can save you a little bit of time here or there. That's kind of the question that I like to ask.
Before we wrap up, I've got 5 rapid fire questions for you. And I just want you to give me whatever comes top of mind when I read these off. These are like fill in the blanks. All right. An AI content strategy without a human vision is like...
An AI content strategy without a human vision is like... it's like watching the same movie over and over again.
In 5 years, I hope marketers use AI for this, but I worry they're just going to use it for this.
Oh, I hope marketers will use AI to help them build their budgets financially. But I'm pretty sure they're just going to use it to automate content.
Data without a narrative is just
numbers.
The biggest mistake a marketer can make with new AI tools is
not reading the terms and conditions.
I think we do that with just about everything, though, don't we? Like I signed up for my Xbox Pass and I did not read those terms and conditions.
If it's Xbox AI, maybe read those terms and conditions.
That's fair. And finally, the most valuable non-technical skill for a modern marketer is
critical thinking. Think about what's popping up on your screen.
Nick, this has been an incredible and remarkably practical conversation, and I really like this idea of building specific AI stacks instead of relying on single tools for important concepts and important decisions. I think this was important for just anybody who's interested in creating content or who is in charge of a content department. So thank you so much for breaking this down for us and sharing your expertise with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to see where we go next with all this.
Before I wrap, did you have any last words, any final thoughts that you wanted to toss out into the world of marketing leaders and IT leaders?
Well, I think anybody that's made it this far in the podcast should probably pick up my Generative AI for Marketers book off of Amazon, but otherwise, not really. I think we covered a lot of ground, but also don't believe everything you read, whether it's from AI or from the traditional media, because remember, those headlines are often very, very sensationalized. And when you think about, what ChatGPT's end goal is and what really what the media's goal has become recently too, they've kind of become the same thing. They want to give you they want to give you something that you'll like, and that doesn't always mean that the factual answers are necessarily the ones that will get the views, that'll get the listens, or that'll get the clicks. So keep that in mind. Have a very critical think critically about everything that you see online today, because it's quickly all kind of divulging into this slop that we talked about earlier.
Nick, thanks again. And to everybody listening, if you want to dive deeper into Nick's work, you can find all of the links to his LinkedIn profile, his book, including Generative AI for Marketers, along with all of the other links that we discussed today. They are in the description of this episode. I highly recommend you check those out. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about how Foxit can help manage and secure your document workflows, especially for enterprises, all you have to do is visit us at www.foxit.com. If this is your first time listening to the Digital Podcast, welcome. And I hope you'll please take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss our next conversation. You can find the full video version of this podcast on YouTube, and you can find the audio version available on pretty much every platform that's out there, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your support helps us continue to bring you these conversations with tech leaders shaping the future of business and technology. So that's all for this episode. Nick, thank you again so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
I've been your host, Charles Verhey. Thank you so much. We will see you in the next episode. Take care.